What's going on, everybody? Today we have our Premier League predictions coming into the new season. We're going to go through the whole table. Every week we are also going to be doing live score predictions as well. So go ahead and check those out. We did week 1 already, but this time we are going to do the entire table. So let's jump into this. We're going to start from the very bottom. We're going to go with Fulham here. Now, these next 2, or 3 if you want, are pretty interchangeable to me. Fulham have gone with a different approach this time round after coming up than they did last time. Last time, of course, buying almost £120 million worth of players pretty much, and a lot of players as well, kind of like Villa did last year. I don't particularly think that ever really works out. That's, to me, is part of the reason why Fulham went down, why Villa struggled, why a team like AC Milan, who seem to do that every summer, never really get back to where they want to get back to. I just think that's a really bad idea for any team, let alone a team coming up trying to survive. But this year they've gone a little bit differently. You know, a couple pretty good signings in there. I just don't know if they have the quality, one, to sit back and soak up pressure for huge amounts of time, and number 2, I just don't know if they're going to score too many goals. So Fulham in last, bringing up the rear, but I think the signings they've made are a good base. Now, when you come up, one of those things I like is to get players who would sit into the team, 1, improve the team, and then 2, sit with the team should you go down. I think Fulham have made a couple of those signings, and that would be a good base should they go straight back down to go ahead and build and try and come right back up. 19th, West Brom. Now, West Brom and Fulham, as I said, were interchangeable. I think West Brom are just, the way they play football seems to me better suited to the Premier League. I think they are really, really good at soaking up pressure. They like to play on the break sometimes. That's more suited to me than Fulham, kind of play a little bit more possession, open kind of stuff. So West Brom seem better tactically in terms of coping with their first season in the Premier League. They almost remind me of a Sheffield United, where they can go long stretches of clean sheets, nick a goal here and there, grab a result. They just seem better equipped to do that. Whether it's enough, I don't think so. So right around 19th, another team that's made some pretty good signings, and in a way signings that would probably go down with them to the championship and play a year or 2 on the team. The striker that they bought from West Ham is a really good bit of business, and you can tell just by the reaction that West Ham have had, just almost shock, really, that they've let Diangana move to West Brom for $20 million permanently. It's a really good bit of business. He can definitely grow and turn into a better player than he already is. He had a really good year last year, and obviously he can improve, but he won't fire them to safety, and they will sit in 19th. Now 18th, the team we were just talking about, West Ham. Now this one may surprise a few people. I just see relegation. There aren't too many good players. I mean, there are good players left in this team, but they had a really bad end of the year last year. They just scraped through. The last 5 or 6 games they were better, but there were huge spaces last year where they were really, really poor. And their window hasn't been particularly brilliant just yet. They could get a little bit tougher defensively if they were to bring in Tarkowski. I just don't see that transfer happening. And I just look around and see a lot of footballers who are really, they don't gel together. They just don't. And it's been years and years for some of these players, and they just don't hit the stride with one another. And I think this year, with Leeds coming up, one team is going to go down that is just not capable of holding on with the rest. Every once in a while you get a year where 3 teams go down, and the one that survive just is surviving because 3 other teams are worse than they are and they're a really bad team. I think this year you're going to have the opposite. One team is going to go down that's probably good enough to sit in the Premier League, but Leeds have come up and Leeds are probably Premier League ready already, looking like they're really meaning business. They've got a good manager, got good football. I think Leeds are going to send a good team down by surviving, and West Ham will be that team. Here in 17th, I have Crystal Palace. Now, Crystal Palace could easily go down. Obviously, sitting here in 17th on my thing, they could definitely easily go down. Probably interchangeable with West Ham, as most of these going up the line will be interchangeable with the one behind them. But Crystal Palace have had a torrid restart, a really bad one. And there's a lot of things going on here at Crystal Palace. I think they're low-key getting ready to make a change at manager should the new season start off not so brilliantly. They're struggling to really, get results, struggling to defend. So it's going to be a difficult year for them to survive. I just think they have something that West Ham don't in terms of a match winner in Wilfried Zaha, who's still at the club. Should he leave, you can probably tip them to go down, but he hasn't left just yet, and it's going to be difficult. Now, Zaha, to me, is obviously a really good player, but he's got more attacking talent, more ability, I think, than West Ham have got to go out there and win a match. Maybe not with a goal, but with an assist or, with some good play. He's just a really good player out there, and he's got that potential, that ability to go out and win games for Crystal Palace. He's been doing it for years and years now. I just think having that around still at the club is a little bit of a benefit that West Ham don't necessarily have. West Ham have some good attacking talent, but nothing that is almost like a serial match winner that Wilfried Zaha could be. Next in 16th, we have Aston Villa. Now, Aston Villa, who we were talking about just recently, is a little bit more reserved in their transfer policy this year. Last year, they bought up a bunch of players, and they sort of got with it toward the end of the year. This year, it looks like they're trying to bring in a little bit more quality over quantity. There's some pretty decent signings in there, but I don't think they're ready just yet. There are some good players here, but I don't think they're, 10th, 11th, 12th good yet. It probably won't take too long. Aston Villa probably only need a couple more years before they start sitting around the 8th, 9th, 10th spot. But should they survive another year or two, the Premier League ought to beware, because Aston Villa is not going to stop getting better. They have a wealthy owner. They have ambition. They have history. It will eventually continue to come. But this year, 16th, not too bad. I think in your second year, you just want to survive again. Obviously, you want to improve, but eventually it gets to a point where you kind of just want to survive, and Aston Villa will do that. Now, 15th, we have Leeds. I kind of wanted to put Leeds a little bit higher here. My thing with Leeds is that every year they kind of have a pretty long streak there where they dip pretty hard. They had one last year, but they floated back up toward the end of the year, and obviously ended up winning the championship. The year before that, they were top the championship for ages, and then had a really torrid run toward the end of the year. And obviously, it might be a little bit different. I feel like at a club like Leeds, everyone's kind of waiting for them to get back up, and there's a lot of pressure, I assume, when you're top of the championship, 8, 9 games to go, everyone's watching, everyone's waiting, and then you kind of dip, and it kind of gets worse and worse and worse as it goes. They turned it around last year. Year before, not so much. So I expect at some point here that they may have themselves a dip in form, and I think this is what this is, or 15th is what shows that. But they're probably better than 15th. They're probably maybe up around 12th, 13th. Good, but I expect them to dip at some point. But Leeds only need to survive once or twice. They're like Aston Villa. There's money here, and they've got history, pulling power. As you can see, they've pulled Rodrigo. there are some another team there, kind of like Wolves, kind of like Aston Villa, who plan on contending in the near future, and they just need to survive once, and they have it here in 15th. Number 14th in the table, Brighton. Now, Brighton, to me, I think are evolving. I don't necessarily think they've gotten way better, because their window's kind of been relatively quiet, but Brighton, to me, with Graham Potter, are evolving a little bit. Graham Potter, I think, last year went through a different type of year than he's used to. Being abroad, he was in one of those places where he could, play your football and, work a way out, and you can beat teams with football. Sometimes in top divisions, and especially the top 5 divisions, in Europe, Germany, Italy, Serie A, La Liga, Premier League, you could be really good at playing football, and you could have a really good tactical setup, and some teams are just better than you, and it's just not going to work. There are some divisions where you could get away playing your style, and if your style is good enough, you're going to beat everybody, whether your team is on paper better than everybody or not. But I think Graham Potter last year realized that, one, and two, he started to find a way to work it a little bit toward the end of the year. And I think he's figured out that he could play his football against a lot of teams now. And they're just, starting to get into it a little bit. But Brighton are going to surprise a couple people this year playing really good football. They're going to have games where they're going to, get really good results, 3-4-0s on some teams. They are ready to take that next step, Brighton. And they're going to be here in 14th because there's still going to be some growing pains, I think. As I said, the squad's not the greatest, but the football here can carry them up a little bit further than maybe their players may on paper. 13th, we have Newcastle. Now, Newcastle have had a pretty good window. Fraser isn't one of those players I would have signed after what he did to Bournemouth last year. Or over the summer or whatever it may have been, but he's still got a bit of talent. Fraser, of course, he was wanted by quite a few clubs, and I think that got to his head a little bit. So we'll see if he could revive his career, I guess. He had a really bad year. Ever since the speculation, he's had a torrid time. It was kind of like Berahino, where he was linked with Tottenham for a little bit, and then his career fell off a cliff. Sometimes that stuff hurts footballers, and it seems to have hurt Fraser here. So we'll see if he can get back to it. But they've had 2 really good signings, or 3 really good signings, really. Jeff Hendricks, a good signing. Callum Wilson, of course, is a really good signing, and Jamal Lewis is a good signing as well. 3 proven Premier League players, or 4. And I think that's what Steve Bruce wanted to bring in. And he probably exceeded expectations a little bit last year, but I think they were really missing a goal scorer. They've got one now. I think Callum Wilson is a really good player. Whether they defensively are good enough, I mean, week in and week out, Newcastle are kind of odd. They have a really good result. They beat one of the top teams, and then they pulled a dud the next week to a team in last place. Newcastle are incredibly inconsistent, and I think that's in part down to the style of play. It's kind of deeper. It's kind of back against the wall-ish. Whether Steve Bruce comes out of that a little bit, we'll see. I think with the team he's got at his disposal, he can come out a little bit, and they can play better football than they did last year, but we shall see. 13th is a good area for them. There are better teams here, but Newcastle are definitely getting better. 12th place, we have Burnley. Now, Burnley have had a weird couple of months. Obviously, they came back and they were kind of just floating around, those top 8, 9, 10 places for a long time. And then, they've had weird issues with their contracts, and Sean Dyche has been, talking about it out loud and publicly, and it's been a very strange situation over there. Of course, Jeff Hendrick left. Minimal signings again. Burnley aren't exactly filled with money, and this is a difficult spot to be in with the pandemic and everything. But he keeps working miracles, and he's been doing this a really long time now. And they are probably the best at going in and collecting, them and Sheffield are the best probably now at going in, collecting a clean sheet, and nicking a goal. So I don't expect them to necessarily be down the table, but, a couple of bad results to start the year, and then everyone's kind of looking at Burnley like, when's this going to get better? And then it gets, Sean Dyche is out in public again speaking about the lack of transfers. It can just snowball effect that could derail a season. But as I said, Sean Dyche has been doing this a long time. He's been good at it. He's very good at it. And I expect him up around 12th. And then I eventually expect Burnley to just start putting some money in at some point. At some point, they have to. They just have to. It's not sustainable. In theory, Dyche can only work so many miracles. Up to 11th, we have Southampton here. Southampton quietly had a really good turnaround. Very quietly had a very good turnaround. Danny Ings, of course, scoring plenty of goals. He's fit. Been scoring goals, of course, and they had a really good end to the season last year. Really good restart. It's a good team that he has here, Hasenhüttl, and then he's a good manager as well. And they're playing some good football, some open football. I'd like to see them get some good quality in, see what he could work with in that sense. But Southampton, to me, are at minimum on level terms with all these teams below them. The managers at minimum on level terms with all these teams below. Maybe not Leeds probably have the best manager at the moment, but of course it's all about getting results. I think he's figured out how to do it. He seems to have figured out how to get this team up and running, scoring goals, defending well. I have them in 11th. Here in 10th, we have Sheffield United. Now, Sheffield United outdid anybody's expectations, probably even their own last year. Of course, a couple results here and there, and they finished 5th. They had a great season, a really, really good season. Now, Sheffield, in their second year, they've had a couple of pretty decent signings, though upper championship players that they've pulled out of the championship who can make it in the Premier League is always a nice bit of, nice business strategy for teams who don't have a ton of money and teams who are, I don't want to say fighting relegation, but, fighting going down. The second year is always the toughest, and when you are a team like Sheffield and you're not rolling in money, you have to at minimum find players you can roll over and resell. I think Sheffield United have done that. I think they're going to come back this year. I think there are going to be a couple extra games this year where teams figure out how to break them down, but I don't expect a humongous drop-off, but I expect a tiny second season slump here. Sheffield United in 10th. Now we jump up to 9th, and here we have Tottenham. Now, Tottenham had a bad year last year, of course. Started really poorly, and then the swap, and then, they didn't really get better, but they were obviously moving on to a new manager, trying to change styles, trying to adapt to Mourinho himself. But their window also hasn't been exactly overwhelming. Højbjerg has come in. I don't think Højbjerg is a massive upgrade in midfield. But him and Doherty, who he also signed at right back, are two players who are Mourinho-esque in terms of they can defend and they can get in there and they can fight. They're battlers. Those are the types of players Mourinho likes to bring in. So at minimum, they're going to be a slightly tougher side. I think they're going to come to terms with some of their things, or some of Mourinho's things here, but defensively, I still think they're a bit of a liability. There are players back there I don't trust. I would assume they're going to try and bring a center back in. I don't know. If they don't bring a center back in, I just don't see them higher than, 7th maybe. There are just too many liabilities back there. Of course, Doherty in. Davies is a good player to have at left back, though a couple injuries here and there. The center of the park, I think Davinson Sanchez is a mistake waiting to happen. and the other center backs are good, though older. So it's a tough balance. We'll see. I think I would bring in a center back, whether they do or not. They also want to bring in another striker. We'll see who they bring in, but they haven't yet. So ninth is where I have Tottenham. They can probably finish between 7th and 10th, but the Tottenham of old, the last couple of years with Pochettino, this Tottenham team needs to be rebuilt. It needs to be changed. It's been too stagnant for too long, and we shall see what happens, but I have them here in 9th. Up in 8th, Everton. Now, Everton showed some glimpses last year after Ancelotti showed up. Started really well and then kind of faded a little bit toward the end of the year. But a couple decent results in there have shown that he's capable. And one thing they did over the summer was completely revamp this midfield and upgrade it tremendously. These players, Allen, Decore, James Rodriguez, they are big upgrades. And a lot of people don't know Allen, but Allen is a fighter, and he and Decore are you're gonna struggle to get by them. They bought Tomori in to help at center back. They're pretty decent at center back. They're gonna be tough to break down, and Ancelotti always likes to build back to front. So while he has good forward players, he likes to keep clean sheets. It's going to be tough. There are going to be weeks where Everton, you could play against them for 300 minutes and you're not going to score goals. It's going to be tough on Everton here. I think they take that jump forward. I think the midfield overhaul already is so huge. Right down the middle of the park. You need to control the middle of the park, and that's where he looks like he's going to try and do it. But we'll see. There are obviously players. James Rodriguez, we'll see if he can get back to his best. But Everton up in 8th, that seems like a good spot for them. 7th, we have Wolves. Now, Wolves, right toward the end of the year, we're trying to get to, that Champions League spot, or 5th place at the time, before City had their thing overturned. 5th place, everyone was fighting for it for a while there. Didn't quite get there. Had some results toward the end of the year that were not so great. They were struggling to score goals. So we'll see. They did spend £35 million on Fabio Silva, and while I don't think Fabio Silva is going to come in and light it up immediately, he will eventually start to score goals, and he's sitting behind a really, really good striker in Raul Jimenez. Adama Traore is still there. We'll see if anyone puts the money up to go get Traore this summer. I don't particularly expect it. So we'll see how everything works out with Wolves, but one, they don't really concede too many goals. If they can score some more goals, they're going to be difficult to beat, but they have a lot of 1-0s, and it's not because they're brilliant defensively, but they hold on to the ball, and they're kind of slow in their build-up because of kind of how they set up 5-3-2 or 5-3-1-1, or sometimes they play Traore out wide. It's difficult. I think the manager finds it difficult to play his 5 at the back and also find spaces to fit wingers and still control the midfield. And I still think he's coming to terms with that, but he's a good manager, and he showed it last year, and I think he's going to show it again this year. 7th place for Wolves. In 6th, we have Leicester City. Now, Leicester, very quietly, maybe not quietly, but they had an awful second half of the year last year. Up there with City and Liverpool in December, and after City and Liverpool took them apart, they were dreadful for the rest of the year. And the fact that they fell out of the top 4 doesn't get talked about enough, because they had plenty of points, and they just faded and faded and faded as time went. I'm waiting for them to make some signings, because I've expected them to make some pretty decent signings. Just anybody, really. They replaced Chilwell with Castagne, which is a good replacement. Chilwell, for that money, you might as well move him on. Chilwell's a good player. Whether he's 60, 70, 80 million pounds worth of player is up for debate. I don't particularly think so. I think you could replace Chilwell relatively easily, and I think they have, and I don't expect anything to go crazy on that left-hand side, but they need different. they just need a little bit more, especially up front, or not necessarily up front, but out wide. I think they need better players out wide. We'll see if they bring anybody in, but the team as it is, it's tough to beat. They've got some good players at the back, and the midfield is really, really good. One of the top 3 or 4 midfields in the Premier League with Tielemans and Diddy. It's just a tough midfield, a good midfield, capable of controlling games. So I have them up here in 6th. I just don't. They need to make some really good signings, I think, if I want to move them up any further. Up in 5th, we have Arsenal. Now, Arsenal worry me a little bit. I have them here in 5th, but this could be from 5th anywhere up to 10th. Now, Arsenal have had, obviously, 2 trophies in the last 2 games. They won the FA Cup, and they won the Community Shield, though the Community Shield is more of a friendly, but they did beat Liverpool, and everybody put out their teams, and it's a win's a win. And they beat City, and they've had a really good run against some really good teams. But that's not the worrying part to me. The worrying part to me with Arsenal is that they struggle, to me, to break down teams that like to sit around. And Arteta he's a really good manager, and a lot of people are going to be, he's only been around a year. Arteta tactically has it. He has a mind for this, and his wins over City and Liverpool and Chelsea show that. And he's not necessarily going out there and overrunning teams. He's just doing what he has to. In those games against City, Liverpool, Chelsea, he sat back, soaked up pressure, everyone's been disciplined, and then they break quickly, and they don't hold on to the ball very long, but he knows he's not going to go toe-to-toe with some of these really big teams and play open football and be able to get results. And at the moment, that's all he's getting, results. They're not playing pretty, they're not necessarily out-shooting teams, out-playing teams, but they're getting the results, and that's all that really matters at this moment in time for Arteta, because Arsenal need a really big rebuild. But as I said, what worries me is, 1, he's going to have to do that again, get big results against big teams, and 2, he's going to have to change his style up and knock teams out who are coming to sit back and play for a draw. It's 2 different animals. One animal he's got the mind for, the other one, we shall see. Arsenal, they've bought in Gabriel. There are talks of them bringing in a couple more players. We shall see. Aouar would be a really good signing for them as well. Aubameyang's contract seems to be almost done. It should be done in the next day or 2. But 5th is where I have them. They're not going to break into the top 4, but I could see them falling further down the table. Now in 4th, we have Manchester United. Now, United, quiet window. But they were playing much, much better after Bruno Fernandes came in. It seems that they're playing more free-flowing football. Solskjaer has allowed it to open up since Fernandes has shown up. They get quite a lot of good play out of their front 3. Their front 3 have scored plenty of goals. They draw mistakes, penalties, free kicks, all those things, which, when you're a team like that and you have players like Fernandes who are going to bury them all the time, it's not necessarily an issue, is it? There are teams where you could stop their free-flowing move and know nothing's coming from a set piece. You can't do that with this United team. I still think they have issues at the back, which is why I don't want to put them further up the table. Plus, the teams in front of them are very complete, or more complete to me. I just think the back 4 need to be redone. I think they need another left back to compete with Luke Shaw, or at least take over for Luke Shaw when he's hurt, or just sit in front of Luke Shaw, whatever it may be, and they need another left back. The center backs, to me, aren't good enough to be top of the Premier League quality. I don't think so of any of the center backs. And then Wan-Bissaka on the right is a good option, of course, but I still think there are too many holes at the back for United to go ahead and beat out the other three teams, but fourth is a pretty decent spot. I don't think they're going to challenge, maybe early, but I don't expect that challenge to happen over the entire season. Number 3, third place, we have Chelsea. Now, I've struggled with this one a little bit, these top 3, but third, I am going to go with Chelsea. Now, Chelsea have bought everybody in. Kai Havertz has come in, Timo Werner has come in, Ziyech has come in. There are some good players they've bought in. Chilwell, of course. My issue with Chelsea will always be the center backs. They are not good enough for this challenge. They are not good enough to not make the mistakes they always seem to be making all year long. They are not good enough to challenge all year long at the back. And that's just what's struggling here, because the forward, or the midfield and the forward, should be good enough here to cause problems to Liverpool and Chelsea, or Liverpool and City. The forwards are good enough, the back line isn't. And that's just the long and short of it with Chelsea. United have the same problem to me, but I think Chelsea have a more complete midfield and a more complete forward line. Well, more complete midfield at least, and the forward line can compete with United's. I just think United's back four are worse than Chelsea's back four, but Chelsea's back four, the difference between United and Chelsea's back four is a lot smaller than the difference between their back four and the complete teams of Liverpool and City. It's just too much of a gap. So I expect them to finish third. I think they're better than United. I think they're good enough to challenge really for a long while here, but I think the defense lets them down. And here we have first and second, and we are going to go Manchester City in second. Now, I've struggled with this one a while. The top 3 in general I've struggled with just thinking about it, but Manchester City, to me, still haven't done anything along their problem areas. And they've had a decently quiet window. We'll see if they end up bringing in Koulibaly and stuff like that. They haven't just yet. But they need another center back, I think. I think they need just covering those areas. I think they need maybe a little bit help at left back. It's the problem when you nitpick with these sides is that, or the problem nitpicking with City is that I don't want to nitpick City, but Liverpool are complete. Liverpool have issues in depth, but the starting 11 are very much complete. Manchester City's starting 11 at this very moment in time needs another center back. It just does. The fullbacks like to get up and down the pitch, midfield and stuff. I think, I don't want to say they could use help at striker, but relying on Gabriel Jesus should Aguero get hurt would be tough. Aguero's getting older. He can't play 90 minutes every game. I know people like to bring up Jesus' stats, but Jesus to me isn't that great of a striker. And Jesus, you just kind of have to watch and just notice the difference in quality. I think they eventually should swap him out for someone of genuine, really, really good striker, top type of striker. While Aguero's still there, probably not now, but eventually I think they should. But as I said, if City don't bring in a center back, they are not going to challenge Liverpool, and they could finish behind Chelsea, and they could finish behind United. It's going to be a pretty tight year at the top, but as I said, I expect Liverpool to win it. Liverpool's starting 11 to me at the moment is still the best in the league, I think. The midfield outworks most teams. The back line is probably the best in the league. The forward line, a top 1, 2, 3, whatever, even if you want to nitpick the forward line in terms of output, whatever you want to do here, it's still a top 2 or 3. City, United, probably, or Chelsea. The top 4 here are, the gap between 4th and 5th to me is so big. I think these 4 teams, Liverpool, Chelsea, City, United, are so far ahead of everyone else. But as I said, Liverpool did it last year. Liverpool have been getting better and better. I think they are going to make some signings. I think at some point they are going to sign in or sign up or sign whatever another winger. I think that will happen. I think Liverpool are waiting on sales. They have players sitting on the books at the moment that they want to get rid of. Harry Wilson, Marco Grujic, maybe Brewster, depending on what's going on there. But I think they have a bit of money there that they could splash around, but I think they're waiting for those players to leave. Liverpool, if they bring in a winger, a center back, and not anything. A lot of people have been talking about Thiago. I know Thiago, I know he'd be a different type of player here. And he would definitely change it up. I don't think he's needed necessarily. I think the midfield is good. They have 7 players now fighting for those 3 spots. I think Naby Keita is going to make his jump. And I just don't see the need for another midfielder unless someone leaves. I don't expect Wijnaldum to leave. I just don't see Liverpool going for another midfielder. Back line, forward line, or where the signings will come in. They just need depth. Liverpool's problem will always be depth. But we'll see, guys. So let me know how you guys think in the description or in the comment section down below where you guys think some of these teams are going to finish, where I'm wrong, where I'm right. Let me know. But for now, guys, that is it. So peace.